The Met Office does not often use the word likely when talking about records being broken. It is an institution that deals in probabilities and forecast ranges in carefully hedged language designed to communicate uncertainty without generating panic. So when Met Office Deputy Chief Forecaster Steve Coker stepped in front of the data and said, in plain, unambiguous language, it is likely that the May and spring UK temperature records will be broken over the bank holiday weekend, with forecast temperatures surpassing the existing record of 32.8 degrees Celsius. That sentence carried a weight that no weather app notification can replicate. Not possible. No chance of. Likely. From the Deputy Chief Forecaster. About a record that has stood since 1922. And London is sitting directly in the center of the zone where it is most likely to happen. With a 33 degrees Celsius forecast for Bank Holiday Monday, and the entire city already under a UKHSA heat health alert that was issued 5 weeks before the core alerting season was supposed to begin. The sequence of events that has brought Britain to this moment is worth tracing precisely, because the record that Steve Coker described as likely to fall did not survive a century through luck. It survived because May and Britain is simply not supposed to produce this kind of heat. The 32.8 degrees Celsius, reading at Camden Square in London on May 22, 1922, was an extraordinary outlier in its time. A reading that the peer-reviewed Royal Meteorological Society Attribution study published in June 2025 acknowledged carries some site exposure reservations by modern standards, but which has stood in the record books for 104 years regardless. The unambiguously verified May record, the one with no instrumentation caveats, is 29.4 degrees Celsius at East Finchley, London, in 1944. Both of those records are now directly in range. The ITV News report on the current forecast was explicit. Temperatures are forecast to reach 33 degrees Celsius in southern England and the Midlands on Monday. If that verifies, both the 1944 and 1922 marks fall simultaneously, in May, before the summer solstice, before the country has had a single week of seasonal acclimatization. The confirmed day-by-day forecast for London through the bank holiday weekend tells the story of how the capital builds toward its potential record-breaking moment. Friday, May 22nd, opened the sequence with temperatures already above 28 degrees Celsius across London, the official heatwave declaration threshold for the capital. Triggering the first day of what the Met Office confirms is an ongoing heatwave for London, under its formal definition of 3 or more consecutive days at or above the threshold. The London forecast for Saturday is 30 degrees Celsius. Sunday climbs to 31 degrees. Then, Bank Holiday Monday, May 26th, delivers the peak, with the Met Office's central projection placing London at 32 to 33 degrees Celsius, and the highest probability of the 1922 record being broken, concentrated in the North London and Cambridge corridor that Steve Coker specifically identified. Temperatures are then predicted to remain above 28 degrees Celsius through Tuesday, May 26th, meaning London will have completed a minimum of 5 consecutive days at or above its heatwave threshold. The first time that has occurred in May in the city's modern meteorological record. The Time Out London forecast, drawing on Met Office data, confirmed the specific day-by-day progression for the capital in terms that any Londoner planning their bank holiday can use directly. The mercury will be above 28 degrees from Friday, May 22 through Tuesday, May 26. Saturday, 30 degrees. Sunday, 31 degrees. Monday, 33 degrees as the peak. The question of whether Bank Holiday Monday becomes the hottest May Day ever recorded in the UK is not, in Steve Coker's framing, a question of whether conditions are capable of producing it. It is a question of whether the specific alignment of the blocking high-pressure position, the southerly Saharan airflow intensity, and the urban heat island amplification at the North London monitoring stations all combine at their optimal configuration on that specific afternoon. The attribution science that underlies that probability was stated clearly by the ITV report. A recent attribution study by Met Office scientists found that breaking the UK's May heat record is now around 3 times more likely than it would have been without human-caused greenhouse gas emissions. 3 times more likely. That is not a marginal statistical shift. That is the climate loading the atmospheric dice in a way that makes record-breaking May events a realistic operational expectation rather than a once-in-a-century surprise. The UKHSA's yellow heat health alert that is now active across London, the Midlands, Eastern England, and the South East from 9 a.m. Friday, May 22nd to 5 p.m. Wednesday, May 27th is the formal public health system's confirmation that this event is being treated as a genuine health emergency rather than an inconvenient warm spell. Yellow alert status activates enhanced monitoring of high-risk individuals across the health and social care sector, increased outreach by community health teams and care providers to elderly and vulnerable people on their registers, and specific communications to primary care about heat illness recognition. The government issued a separate, specific heat health alert for London as temperatures hit 31 degrees Celsius on Friday. An alert that UK HSA officials confirmed warns that hot weather could cause minor disruption to health and social care services through to Wednesday. That language, minor disruption at 31 degrees, should be understood in the context of what Monday's projected 33 degrees actually means for the health system when it arrives into a population that has had 0 weeks of thermal acclimatization. The alert level may be yellow now. The health consequence of an unaccustomed population hitting 33 degrees in May is not minor. London's specific vulnerability to a bank holiday 33-degree day is a function of multiple compounding factors that operate simultaneously and reinforce each other. The urban heat island effect in Greater London, driven by the city's density of dark-surfaced roads and roofs, the waste heat from air conditioning systems cooling interiors while pumping thermal energy into the streets, and the scarcity of green space and tree canopy in the densest boroughs, means London consistently runs 4 to 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding countryside during any warm event. On a 33-degree day, the street-level experience in densely built zones like the City of London, Southwark, Tower Hamlets, and the inner North London boroughs will be materially hotter than the headline monitoring station reading at Heathrow or Kew Gardens. The bank holiday timing adds a specific behavior dimension. The population most likely to be outdoors during the peak of a 33-degree afternoon. Families with children, tourists, people attending outdoor events at parks, festivals, and riverside venues, is not the population that typically follows heat health guidance most rigorously. It is the population most likely to be in direct sunlight, furthest from shade, carrying least water, and most likely to be managing young children who cannot regulate their own heat exposure. The mortality record that underpins the health concern is specific and documented. London's mortality statistics during heat events show a consistent pattern confirmed across multiple studies. Excess deaths rise sharply when maximum daily temperatures exceed 28 degrees Celsius for multiple consecutive days, and the increment in mortality risk per additional degree above that threshold is not linear. It accelerates. The British Heart Foundation's confirmation that heat waves increase the risk of dying from a heart attack by up to 50% applies with greatest force to events where the peak temperature sits furthest above the acclimatization baseline. Precisely the situation when 33 degrees arrives in May rather than July. The ONS documented over 4,500 excess deaths in England associated with the heat periods of 2022. The 2022 events arrived in July after weeks of gradually warming spring weather that had provided at least partial acclimatization. The 2026 event is arriving in May after a cold snap in the first week of the month that was described as producing the coldest May night in 5 years. The physiological distance between where the population's thermoregulatory systems are configured and where Monday's 33-degree afternoon is going to place them is the largest that any May heat event in the modern record has required people to bridge. The tropical nights that accompany the peak days of this event are the component that transforms a bad afternoon into a dangerous multi-day health event. A tropical night, the classification for a night in which the minimum temperature does not fall below 20 degrees Celsius, prevents the body from completing the overnight recovery from daytime heat stress that cool nights normally provide. During the 2022 July event, Kenley Airfield in Greater London recorded an overnight minimum of 25.8 degrees Celsius, the highest nighttime temperature ever recorded in the UK. Saturday and Sunday nights ahead of Bank Holiday Monday are forecast to remain above 18 to 20 degrees Celsius across the inner London urban heat island zone, meaning that the body managing 30 to 31 degrees on Saturday and Sunday will be attempting recovery overnight at temperatures that impair the deep sleep cycles that perform that recovery. By the time Monday's 33-degree peak arrives, it will be landing on a population that has had 2 consecutive nights of disrupted heat-compromised sleep, a physiological debt that compounds the direct cardiovascular and thermoregulatory stress of the hottest afternoon. The comparison between London's forecast for Bank Holiday Monday and the temperature landscape of other major cities on the same day provides the most vivid illustration of what a 33-degree May afternoon in the capital actually represents in global context. Athens on Monday is expected at approximately 24 degrees Celsius, Rome at 23 degrees, Barcelona at 22 degrees, Lisbon at 25 degrees, Dubai, the city whose summer heat is so intense that outdoor construction is banned during peak afternoon hours in July and August, sits at 38 degrees, which is the only major global city running warmer than London's projection on Bank Holiday Monday on a relative to normal basis. London at 33 degrees in May is not just warmer than the Mediterranean. It is warmer than the Mediterranean in May by a margin that has no historical precedent in the UK's 170 years of systematic temperature records for that calendar month. The infrastructure picture for Bank Holiday Monday's 33-degree peak is one that Network Rail, Transport for London, and Highways England have all been monitoring since the forecast began resolving in the warmer direction. rail surface temperatures on fully exposed track sections in direct sunlight run more than 20 degrees above. Ambient air temperature, translating a 33-degree air temperature day into potential rail surface readings of 53 degrees Celsius or above on the most exposed sections of the network across the southeast and into the Midlands. At those surface temperatures, the compressive forces in continuously welded steel track approach and exceed the buckling threshold on older sections of the network. Network Rail confirmed to Parliament that service-affecting failures double during hot weather periods, and the 2003 event produced 137 rail buckles at 2.5 million in a single event. On a bank holiday Monday, when millions of people are traveling for leisure and half-term, the highest single-day passenger volume of the warm window, the combination of maximum thermal stress on infrastructure and maximum demand on services is the specific scenario that rail operations planners have been stress testing since the forecast for Monday's peak became high confidence. The London Underground, whose deep tube lines already regularly exceed 30 degrees Celsius internally during summer operations, faces the specific challenge that the temperature differential between underground tunnel air and external air, which the ventilation systems depend on to move heat out of the tunnels, narrows dramatically when external temperatures approach 33 degrees. The pollen and air quality dimension of a 33-degree bank holiday Monday adds a further layer of health impact that will be experienced by millions of people, without them necessarily connecting it to the atmospheric conditions overhead. The warm, settled, high-pressure conditions that have produced this heat wave are precisely the conditions under which grass pollen counts reach their seasonal maximum. Warm days accelerate pollen release, light winds prevent dispersal, and clear skies maximize the UV radiation that drives pollen, producing biological processes in grasses and trees. The Asthma and Allergy Foundation data indicates approximately 13 million people in the UK managing hay fever or seasonal allergic rhinitis, and very high to extreme pollen counts across London and the southeast. On Monday, those individuals face their highest allergenic burden of the year on the hottest day of the year simultaneously. Ground-level ozone, produced when sunlight reacts with vehicle emissions and industrial pollutants in the stable, windless conditions of a high-pressure day, reaches its highest concentrations on exactly the days when temperatures peak. The combination of 33-degree heat, very high pollen, and elevated ozone creates a triple respiratory stressor that particularly affects the 5.4 million people in the UK managing asthma, for whom the health alert issued by the UKHSA FO. This event carries more specific risk than any individual weather variable communicates on its own. The practical guidance for every Londoner and every resident of the affected areas through Monday's projected record-breaking peak is evidence-based and specific. The UKHSA's extraordinary alert guidance recommends closing windows and blinds by 9 a.m. on the hottest days to trap overnight cooled air inside before external temperatures climb through the morning. Water consumption of 2 to 3 liters should begin early in the morning before thirst signals register. By the time the body communicates strong thirst, mild dehydration is already underway. SPF 50 or above applied generously and reapplied every 2 hours provides the skin protection that a 33-degree day with high UV index requires. The 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. window is the period of maximum combined solar radiation and air temperature risk, and any outdoor commitment that can be moved to before 10 a.m. or after 6 p.m. should be. For anyone with elderly relatives or vulnerable neighbors in the affected areas, Monday is the day that the check-in call or visit matters most, not as a courtesy, but as a direct public health intervention with documented mortality reduction effectiveness. The Met Office has said records will be broken. The UKHSA alert is active. The Deputy Chief Forecaster has put his professional assessment on the record. What happens now depends on whether the people living under those red maps treat that assessment with the seriousness it was offered.